What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a little college football playoff bracket update because the first round is over, the quarterfinals are set, and it's kind of what most people expected, right? We didn't really have a shocker in the first round of the college football playoff because we got chalk. All the home teams will be advancing into their quarterfinal matchups. We'll break down all of those games here very briefly in just a little bit, as well as short previews for the quarterfinal games and sort of talking about some of the complaints and things that people are saying about the way the college football playoff is shaping out. We'll dive on into all of that and more throughout this video. Try to keep it as short as possible, but I want to let you guys know, and well, maybe not let you know, but just thank you for supporting me in any way that you do so. If you'd like to support the channel, maybe you're new here, maybe you haven't done so before and you want to now, and you want to hear the rest of what I have to say about the college football playoff, it means you're as big of a college football nerd as I am, and it means you got to subscribe and ring the bell so you know when videos get uploaded. You can also like, comment, share. Thank you so much for watching the video, and any other way you interact with the channel does help support what I do here on YouTube, but otherwise, you can go follow me on any other social media. Twitter and Instagram are the big two for me. It's at TailgateNate29. You can see what else I do in the sports media realm with Believeland Media, as well as everything I do as a sports media student. But with all of that being said, let's push that aside. I greatly appreciate all your support, but we got bigger issues at hand, right? We got to talk about the college football playoff. In the first round, some people could say uncompetitive. I'm going to use the word uninteresting, non-dramatic. There were some moments in all of these games where the other team made pushes and made strides, but the winning team never lost their serve. The winning team was always on top and always in control. We're going to go chronologically here, so I'm going to jump around the bracket a little bit, but we're going to start with the 7-10 matchup that we saw Friday night in South Bend, and this was just complete and utter domination by Notre Dame from start to finish. And honestly, for all of these playoff games, you could kind of tell that at least in a point or multiple points throughout each one of these first round games, the road team was succumbing to the environment. They were either succumbing to the cold, which 3 out of the 4 games were played in sub-freezing temperatures, or they were succumbing to the environment, to the noise, and that's exactly what Indiana succumbed to in this Notre Dame game. They just could absolutely get nothing going until about the final 5 minutes where they had a couple touchdowns. They made it close. They got it onside kick. Gonna give credit where credit is due. Indiana fought till the very end and at least gave themselves a fighting chance towards the end there, but the Fighting Irish were to be no match. Everyone thought they were going to end up doing a blackout. No, they just went with their classic blue jerseys, but as is tradition for Notre Dame, they do put the last name on the back of the jersey when it is a big game, when it is a playoff environment. They did that, and they absolutely showed out. The question for Notre Dame was, were they going to be able to run the football on the Indiana Hoosiers? Yes, they had 193 rushing yards and averaged 5.5 yards per carry. That pretty much tells you everything you need to know. Everyone thought, myself included, if Notre Dame could run the football in this game, they were absolutely going to win. And a lot of people out there were saying, well, if Indiana gets out to this hot start, myself included, then they were going to have themselves a pretty good chance. And I think a lot of people either overestimated Indiana, or what I think is more likely, I think a lot of people underestimated Notre Dame in this game, because there were a lot of people picking Indiana to win. There were even more people that picked Notre Dame to win that said this game was going to be close. And I even told you in my prediction video, I didn't really see this game being all that close. And that's exactly what happened. Indiana, physicality-wise, just didn't match up with Notre Dame on the line of scrimmage, and that was clear and evident in that game in South Bend. Notre Dame won every single facet of the game. More first downs. They were better on third down. They were over 50%. The defense was amazing. They did force a Hoosier turnover, but otherwise, the defense didn't really need to do much to turn the football over because, again, what did we see when Indiana played Ohio State? If you get pressure to Curtis Rourke, he is going to crumble under that. Notre Dame did that as well. 3 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, and Notre Dame Fighting Irish get a 27-17 win over the Indiana Hoosiers to move on to play Georgia in a college football playoff quarterfinal. Congratulations to Indiana. It's a fantastic, historical season, and I do believe that Indiana and Curt Cignetti are going to figure some things out. That talent level will only get better but Notre Dame was clearly the more talented, clearly the better team in South Bend. They move on to the quarterfinals. Let's go to the matchup right below that, and let's talk about Penn State and SMU. It was the first game that we saw happen on Saturday, and again, just from the gate, from the get-go, if you were to just watch the first few plays of that game, you would probably say, oh, I mean, this game has the potential to be pretty interesting because SMU, they force a Penn State 3-and-out, and then they get a nice drive going. They're driving down the field, but they get stopped on a 4th-and-1 at the Penn State 19. They elect not to go for the points, and Penn State gets a defensive stop. Well, look at what happens next. SMU forces another Penn State punt. They were able to put together a little drive still, though, did not get over midfield, and SMU forces a punt. So you're thinking, okay, this Penn State offense taking a little bit to settle in. The SMU defense is coming and playing well, and, well, then look at what happened. A pick six to open things up for Penn State. SMU punts their next possession. Penn State turns it over on downs at the SMU 29. Kind of a weird, didn't elect to go for the field goal thing. Kind of one of those things, especially in a game as cold as this. And I think Penn State had some kicker issues going on here in this contest to where it's a little too long to try a field goal, but it's way too short to punt. Let's just go ahead and go for it. And, well, they did not get it. And then the very next possession where SMU's like, okay, a touchdown brings us back in, another pick six. That's the story of the game here. The Penn State defense was the story of the game. And SMU, this is probably the clearest example of what I said earlier in the video, and an opponent on the road succumbing to their playoff environment. It was a whiteout feel, even though it wasn't a night game, which is a shame for a whiteout feel. Maybe not a shame for how this game ended up playing out, but a shame to put the words day game and a whiteout in the very same sentence. That is what is a crying shame here. But the whiteout environment was real, and SMU had a ton of the procedural penalties. They couldn't get out of their own way, and Kevin Jennings just did not have a great day at all. 3 SMU turnovers, all 3 interceptions ended up being thrown by Kevin Jennings, 2 of them being returned to the house for pick sixes. And what we've seen from this SMU team in late stages of the season, that offense goes as Kevin Jennings goes. And if Kevin Jennings is having a bad day, then SMU is going to have a bad day as well. I don't think SMU looked as crisp as what we have seen out of SMU all season long. And I know there are people out there saying, well, they didn't belong here. We knew they weren't going to compete. I thought SMU could compete, but a lot of things happened. Kevin Jennings picked a bad day to have a very, very bad game, and they succumbed to the environment surrounding them. 106,000, all wearing white, were echoing down on this SMU sideline, and they just couldn't overcome it. It's a very hard thing to overcome. It's one of the toughest environments in college football, and just a lot of early mistakes. SMU dug themselves a hole. Penn State's offense was able to find a rhythm with a couple of scoring drives. They definitely took the foot off the gas there in that second half. SMU was able to get a couple points, but it was going to be way too little, way too late. Penn State wins 38-10 over the SMU Mustangs. They get a date with Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, another college football playoff quarterfinal. Let's go across the way, bottom side, left of the bracket. Let's talk about Texas and Clemson, the pseudo-Orange Bowl, if you will. Lots of shades of orange throughout DKR Memorial Stadium, and this one was the first example that we saw of a road team getting out to a hot start. Clemson went 12 plays, 75 yards, took almost 7 minutes off the clock, and scored a touchdown on their very first drive. 22-yard pass. Cade Klubnik finds Antonio Williams, and he gets into the end zone. You're thinking, oh boy, if Clemson can drive the football like that all game long, this is going to give Texas some real trouble. Well, Texas said, it's okay, Longhorn fans, let's settle down, because they put together a 12-play, 75-yard drive of their own, take over just 6 minutes of game time. Very, very good play design. Quinn Ewers looked good. The run game was there, and Quintravion Wisner picked up a 3-yard rushing touchdown. A big key to this game coming into it was if Texas had their run game, they were probably going to end up winning that game just because of how inconsistent Clemson had been offensively throughout the later portions of that season. But if the Texas run game wasn't there, that was going to start to cause a lot of worry. Well, Longhorn fans, I'm sure you all know what happened. You had your run game, and that Clemson look, it is a good physical defense, but the sort of sneaky little secret about Clemson's defense, and I told you this in my preview video, is it just is not that good, especially at defending the run. I think they were one of the worst run defenses in the ACC, so if Texas was going to find their run game, then it was going to be a bad day for Clemson. We'll listen to this final stat line, as my friend Josh Pate likes to call it. Not my friend, but go with it. But as Josh Pate likes to call it, padlock stat, 292 rushing yards, 6.1 yards per carry for the Texas Longhorns. That about sums up Clemson's day. Now, Clemson did provide a good fight, and this is probably the only example, maybe outside of Indiana, but Indiana, you could feel like it was way too little, well, maybe not way too little, but Indiana, you could feel like, okay, they're doing this. It's just way too late. Notre Dame's taking their foot all the way off the gas pedal, and there's just not enough time for Indiana to come back and try to do what they want to do. For Clemson, it was 31-24. Clemson actually fought their way back. They were down 31-10. They scored 2 touchdowns, one at the tailing end of the third quarter with about 3.5 minutes left, and one at the beginning of the fourth quarter with around 12 minutes left. They made that game 31-24, and they had a shot. Only problem was Texas had their run game. Jaden Blue, 77-yard run to, all in all, just put the game away for this Texas team, and they were able to go win that game. And so Clemson falls just short. This was probably the most competitive game that we saw in the first round. This, not on the scoreboard, was the closest game, but you could feel like this was the closest game. Clemson, there were a lot of things that if they did well, if they found their explosive plays, if they were able to slow down this Texas run game, one of which did not happen, they were going to be able to fight. They were going to be able to compete in this game, and the latter just did not happen. They couldn't slow down this Texas run. Quinn Ewers really didn't have to do all that much. He only threw for 202 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, was 17 of 24. Pretty solid day for Quinn Ewers still, though. His QBR was 87.5, so that tells you what kind of day he had there. But Jaden Blue with the 77-yard run, 14 carries, 146 yards, a pair of touchdowns. Quintravion Wisner, 15 carries, 110 yards, a pair of touchdowns, 10.4 yards per carry for Blue, and 7.3 yards per carry for Wisner. You even saw Jarrett Gibson come in and run the football quite well. They ran the ball twice as much as they threw the ball there in that game, and that is what makes Texas so dangerous, because their defense have the best day. No, not necessarily, but I also think Clemson refound some rhythm offensively, especially Cade Klubnik with his wide receiver room. 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Had himself a pretty prolific day, was able to find wide receivers, and especially that of TJ Moore, who was exceptional in this game, by the way. Kept making a lot of very good plays for Clemson down the field. Sure, Cade Klubnik missed a couple throws, and some people might out there even say a lot of throws downfield, underthrowing, the overthrowing just barely, but this Texas defense was strong enough to be able to hold on. It is going to be a little bit of a different beast. Texas was able to slow down the Clemson run game and Phil Mafah, but I know that Phil Mafah has been dealing with some injuries, and it was just a matter of, okay, how much could he manage pain? It made Clemson's offense pretty one-dimensional. That's all Arizona State's offense is. Without Jordan Tyson, Sam Levitt's going to have some other wide receivers step up. You got to go play Cam Skattebo in Arizona State. We'll see if the run defense can continue, but for right now, it's a great performance for the Texas Longhorns, offensively, defensively, even with all the injuries they have had in the running back room this year. That running back room and that run game was exceptional yesterday afternoon into last night, and Texas beats Clemson 38-24. They will move on to play Arizona State in a college football playoff quarterfinal. Let's talk about the nightcap now. Ohio State against Tennessee. And if anybody out there was thinking, well, okay, we're going to get at least one road win, that was the game right there, the 8-9 matchup that everybody was circling. Everybody was thinking Tennessee. If a road team is going to win, it's going to be this one. Tennessee is the most talented team out of any of the four that were going to go on the road. To a lot of people, Ohio State felt like the most vulnerable team out of any of the home teams, and I mean, none of that happened. Let's go back to what I said about Indiana and Notre Dame. Either people overestimated Indiana or underestimated Notre Dame, and I think it's the latter. I think people were severely mistaken on what this Irish team is fully capable of. I think the same thing what happened here with Ohio State and Tennessee. I don't necessarily think people overestimated Tennessee because Nico didn't end up having himself a good day. It's hard to judge Tennessee when Dylan Sampson just doesn't have an impact in a game, and say what you want with the way Ohio State played. I don't think Dylan Sampson playing would have made much of an impact at all. The game might have been a little bit closer on the scoreboard, but this Ohio State defense was flying. Will Howard looked amazing. Judkins and Henderson were dynamic, but I think people underestimated Ohio State. They saw that Michigan game, and some people, I'm not saying this is what you out there may have done, maybe what some of the national media may have done, but I think a lot of people are looking at that Michigan game, and yes, it is a bad loss. Who hasn't had a bad loss this year, right? Tennessee's got a loss on the road to Arkansas. Not necessarily a bad loss, but a loss in a game that you have to win. Notre Dame's got the worst loss out there to Northern Illinois. I think that clouded a lot of people's judgment of them. Georgia has got some unfavorable performances, but games that they ended up pulling out there. And you take a look at teams that didn't make the college football playoff. Bad losses kept them out. Alabama, Ole Miss, Miami, it kept them out. Teams have had down performances this year, even in wins, and it's just the way that college football has played out this year. Yes, losing that game was bad, but I think it clouded the judgment of a lot of people, and it clouded what they think this Ohio State team is capable of. And they reminded us in Columbus Saturday night that this team is capable of winning a national championship, especially if they play like that. First quarter, you couldn't dream of a better start for this team. They go right down the field, first drive, and who touches the football in the end zone? It's number 4, the freshman Jeremiah Smith on a dime from Will Howard, and Ohio State scored on their first 3 possessions. Jeremiah Smith on possession number 1. It was Quinshawn Judkins at the 1-yard line after a 40-yard bomb from Will Howard to Emeka Egbuka. Took a couple plays for Judkins to get it into the end zone, but he eventually did. And then the last one there, Travion Henderson, very nice blocking by the O-line, a great cutback move, and he dances his way into the end zone for a 29-yard score. Then things started to turn a little bit in Tennessee's favor. You had the interception in the end zone. A lot of people thought there should have been PI, but they didn't call PI all game. So honestly, looking back on it, I'm pretty okay with that. But there was a roughing the passer earlier in that drive, which I disagree with. The way the rule is written, I mean, maybe, but Nico jumped. The defender already had him wrapped up while he was in the air. I don't really know what else you want the defender to do, but that's a conversation for another video. But it gave Tennessee momentum. They were able to get a field goal off of that interception. They forced an Ohio State 3 and out, and then they went 16 plays, 79 yards with tempo. Nico found his rhythm, not necessarily with his wide receivers, although it was starting to form. He found his rhythm running on the ground, the quarterback run. Nico getting outside of the pocket and dancing. He looked really athletic last night. I was very impressed with the way that Nico was able to get outside of the pocket and scramble, and I think he can utilize that exceptionally next year. And they went down and scored a touchdown on their last drive. And a lot of people are saying, look, man, if they get a touchdown here, they get the ball to start second half, they get a touchdown on that first drive of the second half, watch out, because Tennessee is going to make this thing a ball game, and that just didn't happen. They went 6 plays, but only 8 yards. This Buckeye defensive front, amazing at creating pressure here in this game. I'll get you some stats a little bit later, but they did end up punting that football away for Tennessee, and then Ohio State did what they did in that first quarter. Second quarter, they could not get a whole lot going offensively. Third quarter, yeah, they could because it was Jeremiah Smith. Again, same fade route, same concept, over the shoulder catch, and Jeremiah Smith into the end zone for the second time there. They forced Tennessee to punt. Ohio State gets a touchdown on their very next drive. Quinshawn Judkins again, and then Ohio State caps it off. Another touchdown, this time Travion Henderson in the end zone for the second time, and that just all about put the game away. Tennessee scores a touchdown with about a minute 56 seconds left. Wasn't going to matter. A dynamic, dominating win by this Ohio State team, reminding us of what they're capable of and setting up a rematch of what a lot of people wanted in the Big Ten Championship, we're going to get in a college football playoff quarterfinal. Ohio State is going to have to play the Oregon Ducks. Will Howard was fantastic. Fantastic. After being doubted after that Michigan game, he was lights out. 24 of 29, 311 yards, a pair of touchdowns. Henderson and Judkins each had a pair of touchdowns, even though Judkins didn't have his best day from a yards per carry standpoint. Still 10 carries, 2 scores. Jeremiah Smith in his first college football playoff game, his first real big game environment in the postseason. He had over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's now got over 1,000 on the season. Emeka Egbuka made some big plays. G. Scott made some big plays for the Buckeyes. And if that Buckeye team plays like that for 60 minutes, they can go win a national championship. They got 3 more games to do it in the rematch with Oregon coming up here to kick it all off. So there's your sort of recap of the first round matchups. So we're going to break down all of these quarterfinal matchups in videos coming out on my channel probably later this week when we hear some more injury news and who's practicing well and things of that nature. Easily the most exciting game in the quarterfinals. I probably don't even have to spell it out for all of you. It's sitting up there in that top left-hand corner of the bracket. Ohio State and Oregon will be the best quarterfinal game, I think, followed by Notre Dame and Georgia. And then I'm actually going to go with Boise State, Penn State, and Arizona State, Texas as kind of a tie for that last place. And that's not disrespect to either of those 2 games, because I think Arizona State, despite what people are saying, I think Arizona State can make this one competitive, and Cam Scadaboo with that dynamic run game, and Sam Levitt's played well this year. The Arizona State defense is great at forcing turnovers, and Texas can be a little bit turnover happy. And Boise State, they got the best player in the country, in my estimate, and Ashton Jeanty. If he can find a way to solve that Penn State run defense, it's going to be a good day for Boise State because what Ohio State was able to do against Penn State, what a lot of teams have been able to do against Penn State, what Oregon was able to do against that Nittany Lion defense was spread you out with some really good wide receivers. Sure, Boise State won't have the talent on the outside that Ohio State or Oregon will, but they have good enough talent to be able to spread that Penn State secondary out, and Maddox Madsen's a good enough quarterback to be able to exploit that. So I think both of those games could be fairly interesting. Now, if Texas and Penn State play like they did in their first round game, I don't think they're going to lose in the quarterfinal round, but Notre Dame and Georgia, I think, is probably the game that a lot of people are going to look at and say, oh, well, Georgia should have this one. Carson Beck's not going to play. Notre Dame is really physical. Dare I say they might be more physical than Georgia? I know, hot take, because Georgia has proven that they are the most physical team in college football for, the past 3, 4, 5 years. But everyone is going to be looking forward to that rematch against Ohio State and Oregon. Key for the Buckeyes, if they can pressure Dylan Gabriel, that's going to be the big thing. They couldn't in their previous matchup in Eugene. If they can do so there, I like their odds of coming out on top. And I'm kind of surprised that Ohio State is the favorite against Oregon in that game. As it currently stands right now, the Buckeyes are favored by 2.5. You're thinking, what? Oregon was the Big Ten champ. Ohio State wasn't. Oregon beat Ohio State in Eugene. Ohio State had to play a first-round game to even get to this position, while Oregon was kicking back, relax, and all cool at home. How was Ohio State the favorite? Well, you look at talent on that roster, and that would tell you everything you need to know. And Vegas is going to play this thing to try to make as most money as possible. Texas, the early 2-touchdown favorite over Arizona State. New Year's Eve Penn State, Boise State will house the only New Year's Eve game that will be played. Penn State, the 10.5-point favorite right now against Boise State. And Georgia, a slight 1.5-point favorite against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We'll preview the quarterfinal matchups more in some videos coming out, hopefully, later on this week. But I do want to end up talking about what some people are saying about this college football playoff format, because I don't think I've talked about it much. And yes, I think I've said this on the channel before. The format is flawed. Why give the highest ranked conference champions first round byes? We see this in college basketball, and it's teams that come from lesser conferences, these one-bid conferences, will get 16 seeds. They don't deserve a top 31 seed just because they were one of the 31 conference champions that we're going to have in college basketball. That's not the way that it works. The way that it works is the top 4 teams should get the first round buys. I have no problem with the first round buys because I think teams find ways to earn it and they earn it well. But I just think you need to pick the 12 teams that you want to put in that field and rank them according to how good you think they are. And in this estimate, Oregon should have been 1, Georgia should have been 2, Notre Dame should have been 3, Texas should have been 4, and then Penn State would be that first team out at 5, or however the playoff committee happened to rank those teams there. It was Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, and Penn State at 4. So that's definitely the way that things should have been ordered there, with Notre Dame getting that first game there at 5, Ohio State 6, Tennessee 7, so on and so forth. But I could sit here and talk about how I want to fix the format all video long. No, what I'm going to talk about now is what a lot of people are saying. See, this is why 12 teams are bad. Look at all the blowouts that we got. Texas and Clemson, okay, sure. Penn State and SMU, to a point, okay, sure. Notre Dame and Indiana, I told you was not going to be a very fun game, so I can understand that one. But Ohio State and Tennessee being a blowout, I don't think people have much right to complain about that one because Tennessee's a talented team. They hail from the SEC. They were one of the SEC's best, most consistent teams all year long, and definitely found their rhythm towards the end of the season. Ohio State was the inconsistent one. They were the puzzling sort of question mark, and it had a lot of people doubting this Buckeye team and underestimating them entering this playoff field. Nope. Ohio State looks every bit as good as a team that can win a national championship as anyone else in this field. In fact, I think behind Texas, they are the second leading favorite as it currently stands to win the national championship. And it's just because of the road that they have to follow. Ohio State's got to run through Oregon and then maybe run through Texas, as well as anyone you see on the other side of that bracket. Same thing goes for Oregon. But I'd venture a guess to say that Ohio State and Oregon, winner of that game, probably a pretty good shot to get into the national championship. And that's no disrespect to Arizona State and Texas. It's just how high caliber of teams Ohio State and Oregon are. Again, I could sit here talk about this bracket, and I'm rambling now. I realize that. But people are saying, well, this was an uncompetitive first round game. Look, the NBA playoffs house 2/3 of those teams. You think very rarely does the 8 seed in the NBA playoffs ever even get a game on that 1 seed nowadays with how good some of the teams at the top of the NBA are. You see blowouts in the first round of the NFL playoffs all the time. Stanley Cup playoff games can finish 6-0 and no one bats an eye. You see Alabama, North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, UCLA, all these high power blue blood Gonzaga, blue blood basketball schools beat up on southern eastern Louisiana Tech State. And it's just no one bats an eye. Everyone loves the college basketball tournament, and yet we're sitting here complaining about a 12-team playoff with some blowout games. I think games are going to get a whole lot better as it goes along. Last year's playoff was special. We got 3 really competitive games, and then Michigan pulled away the national championship late. But we got especially 2, and you can even go look at the past 2 years there. We've gotten 4 really, really special semifinal games. These were first-round games. Now we're diving on into the quarterfinals. Let's wait to have that argument when we get into the semifinal matchup. I think 12 teams is great. I think there's a little changing you could do to that format, but I think 12 teams is absolutely fantastic. I love it for college football, and college football got this right. The home field environment. Tennessee tried to take over the shoe, but the horseshoe was allowed with fans in scarlet and gray. DKR was electric. That wideout, probably the best environment we saw. And there was not a lot of crimson to be found in that sea of blue and gold, of that dark blue, navy blue, and gold there in South Bend. These were some fun environments. While they weren't exceptional games to watch, we got chalk, and I think we got the matchup that most people wanted to see in the quarterfinals. Boise State and Penn State, I think will be fun. Arizona State, Texas, I think will be fun. But the 2 I'm most looking forward to watch are going to be the 2 latest games that we will see. Ohio State and Oregon is going to end up being that Rose Bowl game, I think 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, with Notre Dame and Georgia following suit at around 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That all on New Year's Day. The only one on New Year's Eve will be Penn State and Boise State. Let's tell you where the host sites are. I think I've kind of said it already, but Penn State and Boise State will be in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Ohio State and Oregon, it just feels like I know, look, there's a lot of change in college football, but we get a classic Big Ten versus Pac-12 showdown in the Rose Bowl. Ohio State and Oregon. That, again, is in the Rose Bowl. In the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, that comes to you from Atlanta, Georgia. Texas and Arizona State are going to be out there. That's 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And sorry, Ohio State, Oregon, that is going to end up being 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And then Notre Dame, Georgia faces off in the All-State Sugar Bowl. That is going to be at around 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So apologies for mixing up the times there, but I've rambled on enough. You guys are probably sick of hearing me talk, so I'm going to close out this video. And hey, if you want to hear me talk about anything else while I preview and get my graphics set to preview these quarterfinal matchups, leave in the comment section down below. I appreciate all of you for watching. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Let's start previewing some quarterfinal matchups. On to the next round of the college football playoff. Goodbye.